Okay, so our plan, and I had to put record on there, which I actually did remember, but probably only because I wrote it down. That was my visual there. I'm going to quickly touch on some of the videos that are available generally, touch on social inclusion and looking at some case studies and reflections. So this will be a bit of a collaborative session today with some opportunities for you to chat and contribute in different ways. And thinking about some action so that you go away with something to hopefully try and implement. And we're going to touch on the planning, your planning for the year and how we can include autism in that potentially. So just a reminder that there are these videos available. So for me, it's quite tricky to know what to cover and in how much detail, because obviously there's so many different staff members from different settings and you all have different areas of knowledge. So the way I've tried to get around that is by having lots of different videos available online, and these are all on a specific area of the Cognos YouTube channel. If you don't have the link, let me know at the end and I will put the link in. So these again are things that you could show in staff meetings, things that you can use as a reminder. It could be that if somebody in your school comes to you saying, oh, you're the autism champion, aren't you? Can you give me some recommendations for this child? You could say, well, why don't you have a look through these videos first of all? There might be something there, and then see what the next step might be. So just a reminder that those are all available. So social inclusion is such an important thing because we've found that children and young people who are autistic are more likely to be excluded from their education, but also from services or socially than their peers are. And obviously that then leaves them isolated not only from education, but also the wider community, which has a knock-on effect, meaning that they're then more likely to be prone to physical and mental health problems, not completing education, and then also it has that knock-on effect in unemployment. And I think in one of the general sessions I did, and I think I might have done a quiz at one point, one of the statistics was around employment rates for autistic individuals, and it's only 16% that are in full-time employment. I think it's like 25 that are in part-time, or 23. So it's very, very low. And one of the key things that comes back to is this kind of feeling accepted for who you really are and feeling like you've got a supportive peer group around you. And this is something we see quite a lot with the young people that we go in to see in all the different schools in the borough. So I want you to have a think, first of all, about what you think causes this. Why have we got a big difference in terms of young people who are autistic being much more likely to be excluded, both from schools, but also being socially left out from their community? So could you feel free to shout out, but also you can put any ideas in the chat. And I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. So what do you think might be causing this? Needs are misunderstood. Okay. So give me a bit more on that. What kind of needs and who's misunderstanding? But thank you for saying something, not leaving me hanging. Lack of knowledge from and understanding from their peers or the wider community. Yes, definitely. Yeah, don't worry, I knew what you meant. Yeah, that's an important one, and we'll come back to that one. Any others? Difficulty in communicating to their peers. Yeah, so for the individual themselves. So I like there how we've got a mixture. So we've got the difficulties with the peer group and potentially difficulties with the individual themselves. Vast spectrum means all people are different. Yep. So what would that lead? What does that mean in terms of what's the impact on everyone being different? Isolation can start from a very young age. Yes, which is really sad. What would that look like at a young age, do you think? Not knowing the individual or need well enough. Okay, so that comes back to the staff, I guess. if we're thinking about not knowing the individual. Frustration when things go wrong. So kept back to the child themselves. They might be frustrated, which then potentially isolates potential friendships. Just checking a few people are typing, I think. Inappropriate sanctions used. That's a good one. Yeah, so that's a really good point, because sometimes people miss the point of behavior. So behavior is always communication. It's always communicating something, even if we're not aware what that is. And I was talking to somebody just earlier this afternoon, actually, who was talking about a new government paper on behavior. And the key point is that the main thing is about relationships. And actually, it's often if a young person doesn't feel that they've got those relationships around them, or wants to please the teacher, or has a peer group and things like that, that can be a kind of protective factor around poor behavior. There isn't one way to support people who are autistic, so people may not know how best to support. Yep, what works best for one person won't work for someone else. Yeah, triggers can also be so different, exactly. So I guess that kind of comes back to staff training to a degree. I'm always wary when somebody says to me, oh yeah, I know what to do because I had an autistic child last year. Because exactly what Rachel said there, it's like saying, well, I had a child in my class last year, so I know exactly what to do. Like, you know, all children are different, just as all autistic children are different. But there's a need sometimes to problem solve, isn't there, with others. Overstimulated in a busy classroom environment could lead to being isolated outside the classroom. Good point. So then actually they're being limited in terms of the number of interactions that are available to them to build friendships. So they're missing out on those opportunities. Okay, great. Thank you for contributing those. So a few things that affect social inclusion are peer relationships. That's kind of one of the things that you said about lack of peer understanding. And the relationships between autistic children and young people and the staff. So feeling that they belong in school and that they like being in school and that they're liked in school. And that's been shown to have a direct impact. So it's a protective factor against social inclusion or social exclusion. If there's positive peer relationships and they feel like they belong in that school and they're valued in the school. So I'm going to get you to have a think about this case study child and think about her day in school and when there's opportunities maybe for her to be included, but also to be isolated. Because one of you did say isolation can start from a really young age. So we've got this child, Amelia. Amelia loves roller coasters and mainly only talks about roller coasters. She doesn't talk about being autistic, so she hasn't shared that with anybody. Her peers describe her as geeky. She doesn't seem to have any friends. So have a think about her day at school from the moment she leaves her caregiver to the moment she comes into school to the moment that she goes home. What are the things that happen in that day that could be a time when she is sort of left out from feeling socially included? So an example of that could be your kind of classic one. She goes outside at break time and she doesn't have anybody to play with because she's interested in roller coasters and nobody else wants to talk about roller coasters. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes in breakout rooms to talk about this. So just have a quick read through that again. She loves roller coasters, mainly only talks about them, doesn't share being autistic. Her friends or peer group think she's geeky, doesn't seem to have any friends. Any questions about what you need to do? So we're discussing times when she might be isolated. Lovely. Right. Let's see if I can get you in here. So we've got, let's go for 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. You'll be in great breakout rooms of 3, or one of them might have 4 in them. So it should pop up on your screen. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then I'll call you back. Lovely. Hi, Anna. Recording again.
Meeting is being recorded. Being recorded.
Okay, welcome back. There's a few people still chatting away, I think. So those of you who are back, do you want to share verbally or put in the chat some of the times when in the day when she might have been isolated? So our Amelia.
We were saying in our group kind of first thing in the morning when she comes, could be literally from the start of her day when she's either waiting outside the gate to come in near her peers or waiting outside the classroom door with her parents or whatever it is. Kind of other children standing around chatting about what they did the night before or whatever it is. She could feel from that moment she's there at school feel excluded or not included because she's finding it difficult to think of something to say that isn't about roller coasters.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that there was a Walmart in America that only employed autistic people, and they found that the productivity was much higher because their staff weren't engaging in all that chit chat about, oh, how was your weekend? What did you do last night? They were just getting on with the job. So obviously that can be a positive thing, but in those situations when you are everyone else is getting involved with that chit chat, you could feel quite isolated. So we've got a couple of things in the chat as well. Any social setting or even during lessons, depending on what's being taught in the context, yes, definitely. There's a lot of talk to your partner in lessons, working in a group, which may the conversation may be on topic, but often it will veer off slightly other kind of socially linked topics. Makes her feel isolated because she doesn't share the same interests. Okay, yeah. So we've got a few different points there. I'm going to give you a second case study now. So slightly different one now. We've now got, because Amelia in a way is kind of a classic autistic young person, for want of a better word. So we're going to look now at Tosi. So Tosi likes gaming and other hobbies that his peers share. So he's kind of got quite typical interests similar to his peers. He doesn't talk about being autistic either. He plays the role of the comedian or joker in the class. On the surface, he appears to be popular and have friends. However, he doesn't see them out of school. He has had a few altercations due to inappropriate messaging out of school. So WhatsApp groups and things like that, where he's maybe got slightly the wrong end of the stick. So have a think about his day. I'll put you back in your groups. Any other types of situations when he might be isolated, or how could he be getting it wrong, or how could others not be including him? So same thing, stop share, back in your rooms. I think that we had a couple of extra people join, so welcome to those. And yep, you should all be in rooms. Okay, so I'll call you back in a couple of minutes. Sorry, it says two unassigned. Let me pop you in. There we go. Right, you should both have a room now. Welcome back.
Meeting is being recorded. This meeting is
Okay, again, as you're coming back in, feel free to put in the chat any other examples, maybe examples specific to Toasty, so about him being the comedian or the joker. How might that kind of affect his social interaction or how he's perceived by his peers? There's a few people still coming back. Seems to be in the group with Bama and Sarah. Where are they? Oh no, they're coming back. I think they're all coming back. I don't know if the people in you had Josie and Natalie, were they there in your group? Possibly. Okay. Oh, I'm here having tech issues, lovely. Okay, so we've got one person said they might be seen as annoying, vulnerable to bullying by accepting unkind comments in the name of being class clown. Yes. So we see this quite a lot where, particularly if you've got a young person where they've kind of taken on a bit of a role. So maybe they misunderstood a few things a few times, and then they were told, they kind of were given this label of like, oh, you're the silly one or you're the joker. And they thought, okay, being autistic kind of, we know that autistic people, there's a lot of autistic people in the film industry, because actually that's quite a good job because you're given a script, you know exactly what you need to do. So being told, right, this is your role for that child might be almost useful to them, except it's not fulfilling in the long run, potentially, because it could mean they might get into trouble or could be, like we've said in here, misunderstood. Feeling, yep. Maybe become misunderstood, yep, okay. Any others? Oh, something else come in. Struggling to understand what he says over messages could be rude or upsetting to others, which could make him feel isolated, and he can't join in. Others could be unkind to them and return to the things they have said and exclude him. Friends may not understand their needs because they don't like to talk about the fact they're autistic. Good, I'm glad somebody who's that, Catherine, thank you, has touched on that. May not understand why they have misinterpreted social cues. That's a really important one, because I'm working with some students in year 7 in a secondary school where they've done quite a lot of stuff with the peer group, with the whole class on autism and what it means to be autistic and autistic role models. And then quite a lot of the students have then said, well, yeah, I'm autistic as well. And they felt confident to do that. And they've reflected on their primary school and said how, you know, they never told anybody at primary. And it was this kind of like heavy secret that they were trying to keep hidden the whole time. And obviously that has an impact on your self-esteem and well-being, but they may not want to tell people because they've got a negative perspective on what that is, or may not really have the words to share. Not knowing the difference between appropriate or inappropriate, yeah, and it's quite hard, I tell you. I've tried to write almost like social stories or scripts of what is and isn't appropriate for online interactions, and it's, you know, it's a minefield really, because there is no clear rule. Messaging could be hard due to them taking something literally, not understanding what is and isn't appropriate yet, may not understand. It's almost like two different worlds online. Yeah, in school, not understand what emojis mean. Yeah, and I mean, it's a whole different etiquette, isn't it, really? Now, there's a different etiquette if you think about it. If you're in any WhatsApp groups, it's different etiquette to one-to-one in a WhatsApp group. So I know I'm in, sorry, not in a group, in just a one-to-one message. I know I'm in quite a few groups where you might say something and it just like nothing, get tumbleweed. Because in groups, it's like, oh, somebody else will reply, or it's not really meant for me. And it just, yeah, goes down like nothing. But one-to-one, it's a different kind of social expectation. So again, there's almost a whole set of separate rules of how people act in those two different worlds. So yeah, very good points. Okay, so we've had a bit of an idea about where things kind of might go wrong, or things that they might find tricky. Just going to check there's no one in the room. No. So in terms of how we can help this, there's been 5 main areas. Oh, hang on, I'm not showing my screen. I'm looking at it myself. It's not helpful for you. Right, you give me a nod, Rachel. Can you see that? Lovely. So 5 main areas where intervention has been kind of explored. So we've got building the social understanding and the skills of the autistic young person. A lot of you talked about that. They might not understand, might not get what's appropriate or inappropriate. But we also need to think about the peer group. So improving their attitudes and knowledge of their peers so that they know how to support their friends, and the autistic person might then feel more comfortable in sharing that they're autistic. The support implemented by teachers, so the teachers' understanding of the pupils and the things that they then put on offer to help maybe Amelia to talk about roller coasters if that's her thing, or to help Tosin to take on a different role, not just the class clown. School-wide efforts and knowledge, so whole school awareness events, displays up in school, all of those kind of things. And then engaging the families, because obviously if the family says they're autistic but we don't want anybody to know, there needs to be some work done with the family to help them to understand more about autism, and that might be signposting to some of the parent videos that we've got available, coffee mornings, things that are available from the National Autistic Society, just to help the parents along their journey, or carers as well. So I want you to have a think now, and you don't have to share this, this can be a secret one, about your school setting. So each of those 5 areas, how do you think that your school gets on? So I want you to write this down so you've got it somewhere for your own records. But again, you don't need to share it with me, but you might want to share it with your Senko, your head teacher, your deputy head, somebody who will have some reflection on these different points. So you've got number 1 being kind of really poor, there's not really much going on for that at all, and number 5 being perfect, really. So thinking about the child and the young person, first of all, what social understanding and skills are available to support them? Do you have things like ELSA, maybe social skills groups, discussing it in everyday lessons? Why did that person behave in that way in the story, etc.? Have a think about how you are for that one. The peer group, what things do you have to support peers with understanding? Often this is one that's quite a low score. Support structures by teachers, so how much do teachers know about strategies and things that they can do and feel like they can, have the ownership to maybe set up a club about roller coasters, or have that child to come in at lunchtime to do some research on a computer with another child, for example. School-wide efforts, awareness events, displays, assemblies, things in the curriculum, and then family. So I'll just give you a minute or so to have a think about those. And I'd like everyone to share with me which one they think is the best in their school. So you could put that in the chat. which one do you think, and you don't have to because I did say it could stay private, but as it's the best one, you might want to share. Which one do you think that you're doing pretty well? You don't have to say what number it is, but just which of the areas. And you can just write number 1 if you want, or number 3, or rather than having to write the whole thing out. Number 3. Okay, so teachers, 3. 3. Oh, 1. 5. Oh, 1. This is good. So no 2 or 4 yet, which is what I thought there would be. So that's good. 1, 3, 1 or 5. Yeah. Oh, somebody's just come into the waiting room. Okay, and if you would like, and you don't have to, you could, sorry, a couple more coming in. 5, support structures implement my teachers, level of school support, ELSA, Lego therapy. Yeah, so that almost goes across 3 and 1 actually, when you're talking about ELSA and therapy and groups and stuff, could be supporting the skills of the child themselves as well. So really fine balance with supporting the child, because you, like I said, there's no set rules for this stuff. So you don't want to teach. So I had an example the other day. This boy I'm working with, and he did some work for somebody and was getting paid for it. And he said, oh, I don't, I haven't heard anything back from them about the payment. So there was a problem with it going through. And he said, oh, I don't want to nag them. I haven't heard anything more. Like, I don't want to send too many emails. What do you think I should do? And I said, okay, well, when did you send the last email? When did you last hear from them? No, when did you send the last email? He said July. And I was like, well, we're in September now. I think that's okay. But he got in his head, obviously somebody had said to him, don't send too many emails, which he has done in the past. He's kind of bombarded. But when you try and break that down into how many emails is okay to send somebody, it's very hard to put a figure on it. And if you do put a figure on it, you can open yourself up to, saying you can only send 5 emails a day to your teacher. But what if email number 6 is about a massive safeguarding concern? So you have to have, those except when this, that, and the other, and it gets really complicated. So you can sometimes do children a disservice by trying to teach them too many kind of neurotypical social skills, because actually they think in a different way. So they're not going to be behaving in the same way as their peers. And actually that's quite a good thing, that everybody's different. But then there's certain things that can be useful to know, such as if you're going into an interview, it's a good idea to look at the person or look towards the person that is doing the interview. And if you find that hard, then maybe you could say, oh, I'll find it easier to concentrate if I look away when you're speaking. I hope that's okay. So just that kind of being aware of things socially. But anyway, we could go off a whole tangent about that one. If you would like to, and no pressure here, and I won't be writing down which school it was that said it, you can put in which is your lowest scoring area of the 5, which I'm assuming is probably number 2 or 4, based on the fact that the high ones were 1s, 3s, and 5s mostly. Yep, so quite a few 2s. Consistency, okay. Oh, okay, 3. That's really interesting. So with the 2 and 4, yep. Just to check with Duncan, was the number 3, the support structures implemented by teachers, is that it's not regularly being implemented, would you say, or consistently, or lack of knowledge? Not across all year groups, yeah. And that's something, again, might be worth sharing some of the top tips videos and things I've done, as well as another kind of way of reaching more staff, because that's what's really tricky with you guys as champions. It's like how you share your knowledge with the rest of the people in the schools. Okay, so we're going to touch a bit more on some of those areas of focus, which is, and I've seen this a lot, the lack of kind of knowledge from the peer group. And there's this whole thing, there's a thing called the double empathy problem, which is suggesting that all the focus is on the autistic person to change, and saying, you know, they're not being neurotypical enough, for example. But actually, if you switch it the other way around, how good is your or for the peer group, how good are their kind of autistic social skills, for example? So how well are they interacting with their autistic peers? How much do they know about autism? How much are they able to support them, etc.? And I think this is one of the things that has a big impact, along with the child themselves understanding their own autistic identity. So just to note, people sometimes say, oh, but if you do all this stuff, you know, if you give that child a wobble cushion, or you give them a movement break, what about the rest of the class? They're all going to feel left out, or it's going to affect them. But research has shown that actually inclusion and adaptations, reasonable adjustments, has a beneficial effect on the whole peer group. So the non-autistic peers, and they benefit from attitudes and intentions, because actually you're educating them through your own modeling of how to be kinder, more inclusive adults, which is obviously the end goal, really. So a few strategies to develop the peer group understanding. And obviously the aim is to improve autism awareness for everyone, having strong partnerships with parents and the local community. Often you have parents who are involved with things themselves. So they might be part of a parent group or even a parent Facebook group, and be quite willing to share some of the resources that they access. I think sometimes as schools, we're scared to get parents in, but actually, if you said to them, oh, we're going to have a coffee morning, would you like to come in and share, you know, you're a great parent in terms of the provision you supply for your child and all the resources you do and the research you do you want to come in and share that with other parents? Often that goes down really well, and it's great for parents to hear it from another parent, because it's not teachers kind of lecturing them. And then implementing strategies that enable autistic children and young people to engage socially and be better understood. So let's have a think about how that could happen. So obviously things like reasonable adjustments, so adapting systems and structures. So some of this ties back to the kind of classroom practice and things that teachers are implementing. But thinking about, for example, if you have got a child that comes in the morning or goes into the playground in the morning and stands there, like you said, is isolated from the start of the day and doesn't have any interaction with anybody, a reasonable adjustment might be to say, right, we're going to give her a special job to do in the morning and choose another child, and they both come in and they write the timetable up on the board. And it's not his social interaction time, it's you're doing a job together, but actually that's often when friendships and relationships develop. And even if it doesn't become a kind of best buddy thing, they're being given a sense of purpose and something to do, which also can detract from the child who has that kind of reputation as being the joker. Suddenly they're doing this important job and they're shifting that role as to being someone helpful in the classroom. And then thinking about additional planning, so particularly unstructured times. So we know that breaks and lunch times are times and clubs when that child might not be included. There might not be something that they enjoy doing. A lot of autistic young people find the playground quite a stressful environment. It's very noisy, quite overwhelming, lots of sound, smells, etc., especially after lunch. And so thinking about what could you do instead. So there's schools I've worked in where they've set up a lunch club, and one was invitation only. So it's only a select few children were invited, and they had board games, but also just kind of a general bit of chit chat. And they really saw those young people kind of coming out of their shell. And the case study on Amelia was loosely based on a child there whose thing was roller coasters. And it was actually really lovely because she would switch any conversation to being about roller coasters. So whatever it was, you know, you're saying about what you've got for lunch, and she'd go, yeah, and also the last roller coaster I went on was blah, 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 and she'd be off on one. You're like, And it was really sweet because the other children started to do this kind of gentle teasing sound is the wrong word. It was like banter basically. And they would start saying, oh, nicely done there that you managed to get it back to roller coasters. And this child would start laughing, and it became just kind of their thing. And they were actually confident to chat about roller coasters and started to realize the interests of others and turn taking and all of that. Then you've got kind of specific clubs. Obviously, the thing with all of these things is time. So something I used to do as a class teacher, I had a child who really struggled at lunchtime. So we set him up with a specific lunchtime timetable, but it had to be something that didn't require loads of extra resources and loads of extra people, because we didn't have either of those things. So I knew that on a certain day of the week, I was in my classroom for most of the lunch. So I'd say, if you come back here at 12:15, you can play chess with 2 other children, or 1 other child. And then on another day, we had the lunchtime supervisors had a box of board games, and he would get to sit in the corner of the playground with, again, like 2 other children that he'd play those with. Then on a third day, there was book sharing. Again, he'd be in a certain corner of the playground. And I think one day he was researching something on the computer. So it's things where he could be kind of supervised, but it wasn't anything that required loads of extra people or support. Any other examples you've got there of things you've done in your school to try and sort of encourage? In fact, I think I've got that on the next slide. Anything that you already do to try and develop friendships or relationships or interaction of any kind? You can shout out or put it in the chat. Another example was a child who would come in at the start of each lesson and would go, I think their thing was basketball, or they just liked sports generally. So they would go outside with another child and spend like 5 minutes playing, just like shooting hoops. But again, that was something that promoted social interaction. And in fact, research into kind of loneliness and things like that has found that the best thing to do, or the most kind of best for emotional outcomes, is to join a choir, because you get the joint benefit of everyone singing together, but also you're doing something to like socially together, but there's not too much pressure, so you don't have to stand around and chat all day about your weekend. You're there to do something. So sometimes those kind of things, if we're going to go outside and, you know, throw 20 balls at the basketball hoop, it's like indirect friendship support because you don't realize you're doing it. So we've got on here lots of buddies going on. Board games led by TA, small group, sports leaders. How do you choose the buddies? Because there's the circle of friends approach, which is quite a nice specific job, so that's a good one. Ask the child who they'd like and hope that that child is willing to get involved. And do you then provide, what does the buddy get? Do they get any kind of like training or, you know, guidance on what to do? Ask the others as well, yeah. Parent helpers to help teach social skills. Okay, and what does that involve, teaching social skills? Because again, that's focusing on the child engaging with others, but how are we helping the others to engage with the child? How to ask others to play, yeah. Problem is if the other person says, no, I don't want you to play. And what happens once you do get to play? It's there's lots of skills involved, aren't there? Trained and model behavior from staff. Lovely. That sounds like a good approach. Good at including others. Okay. So what I'm going to get you to do now is have a think. I'm going to put this link in the chat. So this is a Jamboard that you should all have access to and be able to edit. And the first page has got some, you can have a Post-it note on each side for an action step for you personally and one for your school setting of something, and you can think back to those 5 areas, particularly the ones you scored lower in. What is one thing that you think that you would like to improve on personally, so in your own classroom or in your role, and one thing that your school needs to improve on, which might be bigger than you in terms of what you can control, but it's something you could pass on to somebody else. So if you have a go, open up that Jamboard. Let's see if I can get it up as well. Okay, lovely. We've got somebody to come in. It's a good start. And you to add a post-it note, you click on the sticky note icon on the left. It's the 4th one down on that little panel on the left-hand side. You click on that, it will then give you an option for the colors. So you can select a, I'm on the wrong page. You can select a pink one for a personal action and a blue one for a school action. So I can see some coming through, that's great. Lovely. New members of staff. That's nice. Coffee morning. School-wide awareness for autism. That's come up a couple of times. Promote awareness for autistic people. Another coffee morning one. Senko spot in the newsletter. That's a good idea. Very good idea. Sometimes as well, I think that people automatically like turn away when they hear the word SEN or Senko or autism. So we've held parent coffee mornings and we haven't mentioned autism. We've done it like as a like we used to have a parent group called SOCOM, which stood for social communication. And basically all the parents there had children who were probably en route to getting an autism diagnosis, but we didn't mention autism until the parents brought it up, and we'd be like, oh, really? And then we kind of guide it to ending up talking about that without them feeling that they were signing up to that, because often you're not in a place where you want to be getting involved with that. It's like, that's not part of my journey. So you have to tread quite carefully. So that's one thing that can be useful, is to just talk about it as like, you know, name the topic, the coffee morning topic potentially, and then yeah, keep it vague if you have parents that are kind of not as keen to get involved. Yep, so we've got some lunchtime ideas. Transitions, that's another important one. That is really important, that update our school autism folder for more information for staff to access. Yeah, that's another one that there's some guidance from the Autism Education Trust, and that's a big thing that they've identified in terms of information sharing. Autism ambassadors, lovely, for children to develop their awareness and support for inclusion. That's really nice. I don't know if you've seen I did some videos last year for Autism Awareness Week that they it might be you that I've sent them to, actually, I'm not sure, but they're on the YouTube channel, the same one I mentioned. And they support, basically you can show them to the children, there's different like key stage ones, and to help them understand what autism is. But obviously that's one part of the journey. It's not watch this 20-minute video and you're done. With younger ones, they've now, Thomas the Tank Engine has just got an autistic train character. So that's helping with the younger ones to just start to be aware of the language and autism from a younger age. Lovely. Delivering information to staff, great. Get a child to be accommodating without singling out autistic children's needs. Yeah, and I think it's useful to just kind of always come back to everybody's different. You know, we all learn in different ways, we think in different ways. So if that person needs something different from you, that's okay. Great. Calm social play club, lovely. Okay, good. There's a few actions here, which is great, because I think sometimes you come to training and different things, and we can leave with, you know, not much of a plan as such. So hopefully there's some proactive things you can do coming away from this. So I'm going to click onto the second frame. I don't know if this will change it for you. I don't think it does. So at the top where it's got 1 out of 2 and it's got arrows, if you click to the second slide, and it should say list a range of topics you're covering this year. So just to kind of finish off, I wanted to think about, and I wonder if I can share this on there with you. Let's just see. I wanted to have a think about the topics that you're doing in your classrooms and how you can incorporate autism understanding into that. So I'm just pasting in a slide from the presentation. So for example, there was a class last year who was doing some stuff around well-being and identity. So they focused, as a class book, they read a Kind of Spark, which is focusing on an autistic character and looking at their journey of understanding that they're autistic. So that's a great way to sort of kind of sneak it in without people realizing it's not, we're going to sit down and learn about autism today. It's just incorporated in the topic. People that have been looking at composers, they could look at both Beethoven, because people think now that he was probably autistic, research him and find out, you know, why do you think he was such an amazing musician? And he focused all of his attention on that one thing. A bit like Amelia with her roller coasters, that was his thing. So you can talk about how he might think in a different way. Climate change, you might be thinking about Greta Thunberg and include her as a focus. So I've just put that at the top for some ideas. Can see some things coming up already, so that's great. So pop some topics that you're doing, and then it's kind of up to any of you to see if you can link that to how we could include some links with autism. So I'll move that topic one out of the way a little bit. London Eye Mystery, lovely, because that's a book that features an autistic character. So you're sorted already. All About Me. So there's resources you can, there's so much you can do. And in fact, if you look at the video I did on, I think it's the Key Stage 1 one, I can't remember, but there's, or it might be the 3-part one, there's sections there where you can look at you on the inside, you on the outside, personality traits, how you look, all compare about everyone looking different in different ways, because that's a really good foundation to just be accepting and celebrating of difference. Even if you're not necessarily specifically using the word autism, you're just starting to lay the foundations in the younger years. What else have we got on here? Nature Detectives, Growing Up mini piece. So again, you could find a video or feature something about from Chris Packham. So an autistic naturalist who does a lot of stuff. He does all the nature watch and spring watch and things like that. Towers, tunnels, and turrets. Any ideas on that one? And toys. So you can now start putting things in pink if there's any ways that you could link some of these. Wheels on the Bus, so maybe you could, well, the wheels on the maybe you could link that with the Thomas character, maybe watch a bit of the new Thomas the Tank Engine and show the autistic character. So Science with Forces, there's a lot of stuff now saying that Isaac Newton was autistic. So again, you could find some stuff out about that and link it to the topic. What you want basically is, rather than having like, oh, look, we're at the end of March, let's do a week on autism. You want to have just loads of little stuff drip fed through the curriculum, so that by the time you get to the end of March, the children aren't like, well, what's autism? What's all that about? They already know that everyone thinks in different ways. There's different ways of processing. So there's just lots of different bits. And something you could do is, if you're going through like medium-term plans, or you have a staff member in school who would be leading on that, you could see if this is something that they could incorporate and have a target to have at least one thing in each topic about linked to a person that's autistic or something linked with that. Local history. Even things like whether you could get an ex-student to come back and talk about their experiences, ideally somebody who's autistic, and they could then talk about, you know, the local area or something, but thinking about any links with that. Okay, lovely. And I'll share again with you some of the ideas that are some of the autistic individuals and the video link that's got points on this. What I'll do, the only other slides I had was just to comment on autism friendly PowerPoint. So I'll leave that to next time because I'm aware that time's ticking on. But I will send you out the links I said about, and I'll send you a really quick evaluation form. But do let me know if there's anything else that you would like after this as well. Otherwise, I'll try and keep updating you and sending bits and bobs via email as they come up. But hope you have a lovely rest of the day and the week. And come back to this presentation as well if you want a reminder of the ideas and the things that you said. Okay, take care, everybody. Stop sharing that. Thank you, lovely. I could quickly put the evaluation in the chat for people that are still here, but otherwise we'll send it out. Thank you, thank you. Right, that is the form there if people do want to do it now. Otherwise, I'll quickly email it out. Right, take care, everybody.